Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another book opinion. Those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book, and today's book is going to be Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. I have read plenty of Neil Gaiman books before, but I've never read a Terry Pratchett book. I would say that so far from what I see of this collaboration, I'm eventually going to get around to Terry Pratchett books. I hear a lot of great things about him and his books, and I know they're kind of, I don't know, revolutionary. They're really popular, right? So I do eventually want to get around to those. As for Good Omens, it's kind of reminiscent in its storytelling style to, I say, American Gods, in the way that it's telling the story, which I find quite interesting. So I don't know if that's a Terry Pratchett thing, or that was a more Neil Gaiman thing, or maybe it was a both of them thing. For the sake of the summary for this book, this Good Omens is a book about a demon and an angel, and they have been acquaintances, let's say, if not really good friends, since the beginning of time. And they have just discovered that the Antichrist is going to be born. When the Antichrist is born, that means the apocalypse is upon us. Now, these two are not really a fan of the idea of the apocalypse, because really they didn't want to be involved in the war that the apocalypse brings, nor do they actually want the earth destroyed, because they kind of like their lives on earth and how interesting humans are. So they decide to team up once again and to find out where the Antichrist is and stop the apocalypse. From when I heard about this book, first I wanted to read it because Amazon is going to be putting out a show of the Good Omens, and when I watched the trailer, it looked really interesting. Like, the trailer had me going, so I was like, let's read this book. So I read this on audiobook. It's a fairly long book. However, based on the TV show trailer, which I know I shouldn't have done this, but sort of based on the summary of the book itself, when you just read the synopsis, had more of an idea of more of a buddy cop sort of friendship feel between this angel and this demon. Like, I expected a lot more of their characters, their friendship, like shenanigans of those two just doing goofy things and going on an adventure together, right? And while that is in the book, it is a very small part of the book. This is where I get more into my comparison of American Gods, where American Gods had this narrative characteristics where it was like a ton of point of views. You knew that Shadow was the main character of that book, but it would all oftentimes devolved in other chapters to other main characters, to other plot points that all kind of fit into this overarching plot of American Gods. So in that way, I think it's similar. So with Good Omens, the overarching plot of the story is the apocalypse, how that comes to be, how it doesn't, all of that. And in that, two characters happen to be an angel and a demon who want to stop it, but there is also tons of other characters we learn a lot about. So it's a multiple point of view. We often go from one chapter to the next just being a completely new and different character. Some of them are just like seen in one or two chapters, because this book isn't so much about the characters themselves, but of how all these different people are involved with the plot. So we see a bunch of different points of view, a bunch of different people and their interactions that kind of set fate on a roll, and two of those characters happen to be an angel and a demon. And I want to say that they do get a good chunk of it, but they also share that limelight with the Antichrist himself, a bunch of demons, even a mailman, a witch hunter. Like, there's tons of different characters who get just as much spotlight as our angel and our demon. I don't think that is a bad thing. I think that Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett do a really good job of having multiple point of views, where one, the multiple point of views make sense in context of the story, and two, it is not boring when they're switching to multiple point of views. While I do have a preference for which points of view I liked more, I did not mind when it went to, say, another character and was like, hey, this is what so-and-so is doing, because they had such a good way of tying in that person's story to the overarching plot. So Good Omens definitely focuses more on the plot and the outcome than on the characters. That doesn't mean there isn't good character development. They really do work well on growing the characters in the character's individual chapter, even if that character is a very, very minor character and really doesn't do much. So I do think that, of course, you got a lot of character growth and character development, despite it having so many point of views, which is probably why the book is so long, because it's such a gigantic book. It has the time to do that. If it was a shorter book, then of course having that many point of views wouldn't be beneficial to the story. But because it's so long, it does work. I personally would have preferred more angel demon dynamic and them being friends, and like we see more of their relationship and stuff. There's just a lot of things implied. There's a lot of things that they discuss, but there's a lot more things implied, which again is fine because I understand, like after reading it, I understand what they were going for with just telling the whole story. But like preference, just for me, I like my stories to have only have a limited points of view, and I like it to focus on just a couple of characters when it comes to books. When it comes to TV shows and movies and stuff like that, I don't mind sharing the limelight. I think with movies you have to be a little character, but like definitely with TV shows, I don't mind if there's like a bunch of different characters that we're kind of revolving around, as long as it's not too many. Like say Game of Thrones has tons of characters that you kind of follow around in the TV show and in the books, but like in the TV show, and I like that in the TV show. Like in TV shows, I like multiple point of views I can deal, but in books, it tends not to be my favorite. Luckily enough, these two were great writers, so it was really, really fun to read, but I definitely think I might enjoy the TV show more on this if the TV show ends up being good. I might like the TV show more on this because I just like visually seeing the dynamic between characters, especially when there are multiple characters we're going to be focusing on. Otherwise, with books, I like to focus on just one or two characters and their main story arcs and them be the main characters. Here, it seemed like our angel and demon were sharing their main character spotlight with other characters, because it wasn't like the other points of views were minor characters. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like I'm fine if there are main characters, but then of course we have some like little minor character plot points and arcs in there. But in this, a lot of the point of views also felt like main big people, main characters. So it was like sharing a lot of spotlight, which again, it worked, but I guess whatever. I think this is going to be a fun book. It's a funny book. Like not like gratuitously funny, but like definitely it's kind of witty and gets a chuckle out of you. I did like how they built the world and how they kind of built this idea around the religion and what's true and what's false. I always like shows like that. I always think it's really interesting. Like Supernatural does that. There's a lot of different shows that do that, and I always think it's interesting to see how a fantasy writer takes their take on a common sort of well-known religion, even though I would argue that even those who follow it do not know shit about it. But you know what? I like the concept. I liked when those things happen. Because I don't know. I think it's really funny to have like it be sort of sacrilege in a way. I don't know. That it makes me laugh. Like I went to school with a lot of Christians, and the things people get offended for, which it's just funny, okay? It's just funny to me. Like, not to be just purely offensive, because that's not the point, but just like really small things. Like, I went to school with a lot of kids who like had never watched Harry Potter, let alone read the book, because it was sacrilege, because witches. So like sometimes when like religion is portrayed in a sacrilegious light, sort of like how it's depicted here or how it's depicted in Supernatural or stuff like that, it just kind of makes me laugh, because like I know that some uber Christian is getting offended, and I take great joy in that, because honestly it's just a creative difference. They're not really trying to be disrespectful. But anyway, my point is, Good Omens is a pretty good book. If you know that you are familiar, you like Neil Gaiman's writing, especially for what he does for adult books, and if you like Terry Pratchett, I assume because I haven't read him, so I don't know how this compares to his usual style of writing, then you're probably going to like this book. If you like books that have interesting takes on angels and demons, and you want to see a angel and demon dynamic of them just kind of being friends slash acquaintances while also having this kind of apocalyptic story, then you're going to like this book. This book does have some action in it, but it's not based on the action. The strongest points of this book are the overarching plot of how everybody comes together to the apocalypse and what all events lead to the apocalypse, and the characters who kind of get wrapped up in the events that lead to the apocalypse. So if that is the type of book you like, you'll enjoy this book. If that is not, then you won't. And it's as simple as that. It's a good book, but I don't think everyone's going to enjoy this book. But if you think you may, you probably will. That's the point I'm trying to make. So, if you haven't read Good Omens, comment down below. Also, for all the people, if you have read Good Omens, are you excited about the TV show? I'm kind of indifferent because I was sort of expecting something else and then got something else in return. So the idea of the show just has me pretty indifferent. Like, I'm not like, how dare they? But if you felt differently about this book, like you really, really loved it, how do you feel about this idea of a show? Are you just kind of hesitant? Are you really excited? Like, how do you feel about this show if you have like stronger opinions on this book for me? Yeah, I'm curious to know. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue seeing more, click all those bunny bunnies down below. And goodbye, Internet.